By the 1970s, Ireland had put its past as a haven for Nazis behind it. However, one case would reignite the debate once again. In 1976, the small rural community of Mahonbridge in County Waterford became the centre of a media circus. Dutch millionaire Pieter Menten, who divided his time between Waterford and Holland, had just been exposed as a war criminal. You've collected over the years...
Yeah, I collected
newspaper cuttings of it. Local historian Sean Murphy has followed the Menten case since the story first broke. You had seen them and you knew them?
Oh yeah, well, we knew them. Everybody knew that they were there. Pieter Menten was living in Comeragh House. His wife Meta was living there. Everybody knew that he was a Dutch businessman. When Menten would come, it was a very important occasion. Like, everybody would know that he had come because the local driver would have been sent to collect him from the airport and bring him down. There'd be a bit more excitement around the place that he was around, you know.
I think he was known as a retired millionaire art collector, and he kept very much to himself. I think even the locals up there, apart from the people who worked in the house and around the place, I think very few people saw little of him.
Well, he did invite in people, like Stephen Sheila invited in for tea, and people would be invited in now and again. He spoke to us about his house in Belericum, which he said was the largest thatched house in Holland. And he also said that he had an Olympic-sized swimming pool. We found this a little bit disturbing. Well, not disturbing, but, you know, unsettling in that. Why would a very wealthy man be boasting to myself and Sheila, who had no interest in the largest this or the largest swimming pool? It's like kind of a very wealthy person boasting to the local yokels what he had in Holland or what he had on the moon when they didn't even know where Holland was.
Menten was in the lumber business, so he came to Poland very often and then decided to stay. And already before the war, he became a multi-millionaire. Menten got acquainted with Isaac Pistiner, who was a business partner. He did a lot of business with him. And he got very friendly with the entire Pistiner family, also with the nephew of Isaac Pistiner, a guy called Khabib Kanan. That young boy adored Pieter Menten, and he very often talked with his so-called uncle Pieter Menten about his plans to move to Palestine, and Menten even encouraged him to do so. And when he finally decided to move, to go to Palestine, it was Menten who went with him to the station, to the railway station in Lvov to say goodbye to him. Kanan joined the British Army during the Second World War in Palestine. And in, I think, 1942, he met in Tel Aviv a guy from Poland. He knew his family, and he also knew about Menten. So Kanan then inquired and asked the guy, how is my family and how is Uncle Peter? And then the guy answered, oh my God, you don't know the story. I said, no, what happened? He said, well, your so-called Uncle Peter has killed your entire family.
Kanan dedicated his life to capturing Menten with little success until Hans Knoop discovered his story.
I was an editor of a news magazine in Holland and got a phone call from an old lady who I knew very well. She started to talk to me about a newspaper interview which appeared in the Saturday issue of the Telegraph. It was an interview with a guy called Menten, a multi-millionaire, one of the biggest art collectioners in the Netherlands. She said, I am the correspondent in the Netherlands of the most prestigious and authoritative newspaper in Israel called Haaretz. And there is a guy working there called Khabib Kanan, and Menten has killed part of his family.
Hans contacted Kanan, who told him the terrible details of Menten's crime.
Menten lost his money in the war. The places where he owned property, real estate, was in the eastern part of Poland. So when the Soviets invaded Poland, he was expropriated and lost everything, so he was bankrupted. So he moved to Krakow. He offered his good services to the staff of the German SS General Schöngard. Both shared their love for art, and both of them went out to loot art from Polish nobility and wealthy Jews. For his own protection, Menten was allowed to wear the uniform of an SS Scharführer, which is first lieutenant. It's not a very high rank. But of course he was able to give orders to SS men who accompanied him when he went back to those villages which he has left a couple of years before, including Potterotze, where the Pistiner family lived. He was seeking revenge on the Pistiner family because he got involved before the war in a lawsuit with Isaac Pistiner after a business deal which failed. They were suing each other, and Menten lost and had to pay a considerable amount of money to the Pistiner family, and he was seeking revenge. In Potterotze, he killed all the members of the Pistiner family who were around, and also killed hundreds of non-Jewish people there, peasants, who were, let's say, working on the land which he used to own before the war, before he got expropriated. And he was able to do that because he was wearing a German uniform.
Hans's research forced the authorities to investigate Menten's crimes. In 1976, the Soviet police agreed to open a mass grave that contained the bodies of Menten's victims.
I did myself for work.
30 years later, what are your feelings, Hans, when you see this place?
Well, 30 years ago, it was fall, October 76. It was very, very bad weather. And there were probably about 100 Soviet soldiers here on this side. At that time, it was still the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. Doctors, pathologists were putting all the bones which were digged up here on huge tables and putting them together. Those Russian soldiers were doing their work. They had water, they were cleaning the bones. The pathologists were putting every bone next to the other so that, let's say, a pattern of a dead body became visible. It was a horrible sight if you looked into the ground here, because the bodies were still laying there. Some of them were still in good shape. Not all of them were just bones. And when they digged up the bodies, you saw, for example, David Start's shoes of little children, probably 7, 8 years old. All kind of items. It was a horrible thing to see. It was one of the most depressing days in my life. He came here with 2 SS men with machine guns, uniformed, Menten as well. He was very calm, very relaxed. He was sitting on a chair, armchair, drinking brandy, smoking a huge cigar. And you have to imagine that the entire village was forced to witness the execution. Even small children were forced to climb trees because they were too small to watch. They needed to climb trees to see the execution of the relatives.
Dreadful.
Їх позганяли, потім на яму водили по 4. І той німець з автомата посіяв у яму.
І воно хоч не стрілялися, я кажу, не падали вже в ту яму. А там вже була кров повна. Викопали таку яму, і це було багато крові, а вони так топилися в цій ямі і все.
The grave was closed, not by the SS, but by the relatives of the people. And many of them were still alive. Many of them were, not all had died, but the grave needed to be closed immediately because they wanted to live.
Hans returned with all the evidence he needed. But before the authorities could press charges, Menten, who was in Holland at the time, went on the run.
Then I decided that I need to track him down. So after about, I think, 10 days, I finally managed to find his hiding place. He was hiding in Switzerland. So I went there with the Dutch police, and together with the Swiss police, he was arrested in his hiding place.
Did it come as a surprise to you then to learn that he was a war criminal, or that the Dutch were going to try him as a war criminal?
Oh, it did, of course, yeah. I mean, like, you know the area here, it's a nice, quiet, rural area. If three dogs started fighting in the street on Mahon Bridge, like, there'd be a major news incident in the locality, like, you know. So it was a major surprise to the people that he was a war criminal.
When the allegations became known, and extra allegations about the deaths and what he was supposedly involved in and how he behaved during the massacre of Polish Jews, well, it was mind-boggling, really. World War II had come to sleepy rural Waterford.
Menten was sentenced to 10 years for war crimes by a Dutch court. When he was released from prison in 1985, he announced that he intended to live out the rest of his life in Ireland.
Well, opinion was divided on that at the time, because people who didn't live in the area, people like kind of outside the area small bit, were very vociferous that he shouldn't come back. The attitude local people had was he didn't interfere with us when he was living here, like, you know, he gave a bit of employment and there was work for people and there was a bit of money around, and sure, he's an old man now. What was he, 85 or 88 years of age? So what harm could he do, you know?
The first thing I knew about it was I was spokesman for the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland at the time, and I got a phone call from ITV, and they said that they'd like to interview me about Pieter Menten, and I said, who's Pieter Menten? So basically that's how it started. That weekend I was fortunate in that I met Garrett Fitzgerald, who was the Taoiseach at the time, and I mentioned to him what was happening with Pieter Menten. I don't think he even heard of him. And I said, it's going to get a terrible name for Ireland if this man is allowed in. He said, well, let me think about it. 2 days later, he phoned me up and he said he's been barred or banned from entry into Ireland.
Menten died in 1988. He never showed the slightest remorse for his crimes. Clearly, Menten had believed that Ireland would welcome him, and Ireland's past as a haven for war criminals probably encouraged him in that belief. However, Ireland in the 1980s had come a long way from the country that embraced war criminals with open arms. Ireland's post-war record of apparently refusing to allow Jews into the country while giving asylum to committed Nazis is something of a stain on our history. And even now, 60 years later, we must surely ask ourselves why the survivors of the Holocaust were kept out, while the people who caused it, the Nazis, were not just allowed in, but were able to prosper in my country. In the next programme, I will investigate former Nazis who came into Ireland after the war and how they became an essential part of Irish society, playing a major role in the business and political life of this country. Including Otto Skorzeny, the SS commando leader who was dubbed the most dangerous man in Europe. The Belgian collaborator Albert Lykes, who got caught up in the biggest political scandal in the history of the Irish state. Flemish nationalist Albert Folens, who would become Ireland's leading educational publisher.
I gotta take a squirt. Why is the Eurovision such a bag of nonsense?
Kelly was an accident.
Chicken. The hot. You get the joke. Yeah, right.
He's back.
I like it. That's good.
Let the good times keep on rolling. Tubberty tonight, Saturday at 9:45 on RTE1.
Friends, the people want control. Control over their lives, over their health, over their well-being. It is time to cry revolution! Join with us and let there be health screening for all adults. Let the mothers have additional maternity benefits. And let the people have access to more hospitals and treatment centres throughout the country. And let us be the first to cover laser eye surgery. For we say health is not the absence of illness, but your capacity for living.
To find out how you can take control, contact your financial advisor or call Vivas Health on 1850 71 66 66. Danone Danacol is a simple way to beat cholesterol. Just one bottle a day, every day, contains plant sterols that help significantly lower your bad cholesterol by 12%. Danone Danacol. Cholesterol hates it, you love it. Danone.
Can anyone come to take care of the kids?
No. This is an emergency.
You see how easy it is to get into paradise?
Where are you headed today?
Mexico.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to step out the vehicle. I need you to step out the vehicle now.
Dabo.
What's the matter, champ?
My nose is stuffed up, my head hurts, and I ache all over.
Sounds like a touch of the flu to me. I got just the thing.
Uniflu?
Yeah, Uniflu. It's a 2-tablet treatment with a winning formula to knock out your cold and flu symptoms.
Yeah?
See? 1, 2. It's a powerful combination.
1, 2, Uniflu.
Go get him, champ.
Uniflu gives colds and flu the old 1, 2.
Meant to go to the gym more often, and you just don't have the time. With VJ's World of Home Fitness Blanchardstown, the gym comes to you. We've the Power Walker 100 electronic treadmill, now only €399. The BodyFit Cross Trainer, now only €199. And the fabulous T300 treadmill, only €999. Call save 1850 400 123, or shop online and get a €10 voucher for every €100 you spend. VJ's, bringing the gym into your home.
I love a clean home and want the freshness of a Just Sprayed fragrance all the time, which is why I use Airwick Freshmatic. The automatic spray releases a new burst of fragrance every 9, 18 or 36 minutes and refreshes again and again. Airwick, it's good to be home.
A listener here says, my father ran off with a floozy. Rugby, Gaelic football and soccer all to be covered between now and 7. Good evening to you, Minister.
Good evening.